well the whole time I was there. But when you live in a coastal community and you're used to the cooler weather, you go into the heat, it takes some adjustment. And I thought, well, I'll adjust before the week's over. I never did adjust. I just felt worse and worse and worse. And then I was thinking to myself, I can hardly wait to get back to Oregon. It never occurred to me I had anything wrong with me because I had that full physical. Passed with flying colors. So he took me to the airport and we said our goodbyes. And I looked at the TSA line. It was long and I just didn't feel good. And I don't know how I made it through there. I John Wayne'd it and I made it through the TSA line. And then I thought, I need some aspirin or something. So I went to one of these little convenience stores, bought some aspirin. It's probably a good thing I did. Took the aspirin. I went to my gate, which it seemed like it took forever to get there, and waited to board the plane. And when they finally called to board the plane, I got in line, got on the plane, and as I was putting stuff in the overhead bin, I dropped dead. I had a massive heart attack. And I don't remember anything that happened to me on the plane from this point on. It's just a miracle. There were a couple of people on the plane that were next to me that were firemen from the state of Washington. They were down to see spring training games, Mariner games, and they started to give me CPR, and they knew how to use a defibrillator. I really wasn't there. I had gravitated into this light, and there were people I knew that helped me or guided me up into the light. And in retrospect, I would like to think one of them was my friend that told me he was going to do this because he was that type of a guy. He would do it. But I went up into the light. I saw all these colors of just magnificent colors that don't exist on this earth. They're total different colors. And it was just a marvelous feeling of warmth and love. And the next thing I remember, I'm in front of this gathering of, they were souls, and there was a higher power there. I was so humbled, I could not look at the higher power. It still bothers me to talk about it. He or she or whatever it was in control. There's no doubt about it. And I was spoken to, and I was asked a question similar to, what good have you done in your life? And the next thing I remember, I had a life review. And it started from the time I was born, actually even before I was born. And I'll explain that in a moment. Till the day I died. When I was telling my father about this, I told him about seeing my mother and him in front of an old car, and they had just come from the doctor's office, and she had found out she was pregnant with me. And my father said, "Oh my God." And he went and he pulled out a picture that he had in an old shoebox. And there was a picture of my mother and him in front of a 36 Chevrolet. And he said, "Is this what you saw?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "That's the day we found out from the doctor that your mother was pregnant with you." I saw everything. Birth, my childhood, teenage years, adulthood, my years as a policeman, my things I did as a father, as a friend, everything was all there laid out. It was a reckoning for me. When you have a lot of power like I did in my life, whether it's being a policeman or city administrator or a general manager, or I ran a whole Native American nation, um, professor, you had a lot of people that felt like you had power over them. I started to see myself, my younger years, my grandmothers were so good to me, so close to me. I had a stuttering problem when I was younger, and I had one grandmother that took an interest in me and would work with me on my stuttering problem, give me to slow down and try and, we didn't have a therapist or anything. She just took it on herself to do that. And I would go spend time with her, and she would listen to the radio. That was before television, and we would listen to like The Shadow and some of these old Amos and Andy, some of these old radio shows. And she would make me something, and then I always asked her about the Wild Bill's Buffalo Bill Wild West show, because as a little girl she saw it and she would tell me about it. And then I'd ask her over and over again. She said, Robert, I just got done telling you about it. But my grandmother would still talk about it. And she was Norwegian descent, with a beautiful hair and blue eyes, and just a very nice person. And I remember I'd spend the night there, and I'd sleep in a bed with her, and I'd hear her snore. And when I was seeing my life review, I actually heard all that and I felt everything, the smells. And the one thing that happened in my life review, I lived my life review as myself. All the emotions, everything just came back. But I also felt the emotions and the feelings of those that I interacted with. I did not like some of the stuff that I found out people thought about me, especially as a policeman. But there was my grandmother. Her last Christmas was 1954. I saw the Christmas and the gathering of everybody, all my family, and my parents had given her a Kodak Brownie Instamatic camera, and they were trying to show her how to work it. She was saying, that's too complicated, I don't want it. And I say this because I'm that way with my granddaughters and even my cell phone. They'll say, Grandpa, you need this app, or you need this app. I don't want it. All I need to do is to pick it up and call somebody if I need 911, or if I want to check my email or something. But that must have been how she felt, because my dad was trying to show her how to roll the film, take pictures and so on. But I saw the frustration in her. I just saw everybody. And then when I was about 5 years old, we used to go to town on Saturdays, and they'd load us up my parents would load us up in a station wagon. There's no seat belts. We'd be running all over the thing, and we'd go to San Jose. At that time, it was not what it is now. It was a small town, and a lot of orchards and stuff like that. And I was in the store I saw these baseball cards, and I wanted to buy this. I wanted a pack of cards. And I knew not to ask my mother. I knew if I asked my dad, he would probably say yes. It's amazing how when you're old, when you start to grow, you figure out how to play the dynamics of the people involved in your life. So I asked my father, can I get these baseball cards? It's only a nickel. And my dad said, ask your mother. I knew it was a waste of time, but I went over and asked my mother, and she goes, no, you can't have them. So I stole the cards. We got home, and I got off into my room, and I opened the cards, and there was a stick of chewing gum in there. And I just started to pop it in my mouth, and my mother opened the door, and she goes, Robert, what are you doing? And I mean, it was just like I got busted. So she said, that's it. She went and got my father. She said, let's load. We're going back to that store. And they put me in the car. We went back to the store. And my mother made me apologize to the store owner. And I mean, it was just like, it was so embarrassing. And my mother says, send him to jail. We don't care. Call the police. We don't care. He's got to learn a lesson. Well, I did learn a lesson. It was a real good life lesson. And I was telling my father about this. My father wasn't even laughing because he said he didn't want to do it. You know, but I told my dad, I said, you did your job as a parent. And I thanked him for it. And I told him, I said, I don't know if many people would do that nowadays, but thank you for that. But my whole life, my teenage years, I had a situation where I had a sister. I grew up in an Irish Catholic household, so I would say she's like an Irish twin. She was like 10 months younger than me. And my father and mother would want me, if she wanted to go out on a date, I had to get a date and had to be a double date because she wasn't allowed to do that by herself. That's just one of those things. And I did not like to do it. And I was told to be in the back seat. And that's just the rules of the house. So I did it. My mother wanted me to be a priest, and I broke her heart. And that wasn't going to happen. But anyways, I always asked this one friend to go with me, and I kind of thought she was my girlfriend, and in reality, my girlfriend was my '56 Chevy. Every penny I made went into that damn car, and she came over and asked me to take her to a dance at the Coconut Grove in Santa Cruz. I was 17 and she was 15, and I said, my sister isn't going to that dance. So I said, I'm sorry, I'm going to go cruising Beach Street with my friends. And she got all upset at me and just went off on a tangent. And then she came back and handed me a letter. And then she went out with some other friends that night, and they got on a wreck on Bram Hill Road, and she died in the wreck. And so did everybody in the car, except for one person. And it was horrible. When I saw Life Review around that time period, I heard a voice say, you never opened my letter. That was her. I know it was her. And I still have the letter, but I know what's in the letter. Especially when you go through a life review, you know everything about everything. That happened. It was terrible. There were some good things too, though. I really fell madly in love with some lady that I met at a beach. And her mother drove her up from Southern California, and I had to go to San Francisco to meet her. And her mother kind of chaperoned us, and we did everything. That was one of the best days of my life. And I got to live that over again. And I got to live a lot of good, like the birth of your kids, tragedy of children. I've had that in my life. But it just kept going, and it just kept progressing. And I saw myself, my father and mother owned a construction company, landmark builders, and they built several tracts of homes in the Silicon Valley and the Santa Cruz area. And I worked in construction from the time I was 6 till I was 20, supposed to take over the company, and ended up, my friends talked me into taking a police test with them, and I ended up being number 1 on the list. So I got offered a job, so I became a policeman at the age of 20, actually 20 and a half. I started just a whole new phase of my life, changed myself totally. I went from kind of an easygoing surfer type person until to a real rigid Jack Webb, just the facts type guy. And I saw myself in all my assignments. There's one in Watts that I talk about after the riots. That was horrible. It was like a war zone there. I mean, and I was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy, which probably didn't help me out too much down there. But when you had a traffic stop or something down there, a lot of times they take you in the alleys, and the projects were 2 or 3 stories tall, and the next thing you know, you're out there and you look up and there's rifles pointing down at you. And there was gunfire all over, all the time. And we were arresting somebody, myself and another guy, and heard some gunfire go off, and I knew it was close. And the next thing I know, I see somebody running at me with a rifle. And I yelled at him to halt, but he didn't. He just kept coming. But he never moved the rifle. He had it with him. And I probably could have done more than I did, but I'm glad I didn't, because he came up and asked us for help because he'd just been robbed and burglarized, and he said he'd shot off some warning shots. And when I saw that part of my life review, I heard a voice say, "Thanks for not shooting me." That was him. I know it was him. And I had this really close friend as a kid that was a hemophiliac, and his name was Paul. He was my neighbor, and he couldn't play with us. Couldn't do much with us because he would bleed, and then he'd have to have transfusions and stuff. So if it rained and stuff, I'd go over and I'd play board games with him. And his mother would always, we'd play Monopoly or Stratego or something like that. And his mother would always make Kool-Aid for us. And I like cherry Kool-Aid, and she had a little cherry package of just for me. And she would make it in there, and she'd put 2 scoops of sugar every time. And when I had my life review, I could taste that Kool-Aid. And I could, I could read her mind, and when I saw this part in my life review, I heard a voice say, "You were my best friend." I told this to my father, and my father said, Paul's father came by to see me a few years ago to tell me that Paul had passed away. I said, "Really?" And he go, "Yes, he was in the Los Angeles area, and he had an incident where he needed a blood transfusion, and he got some tainted blood, some AIDS tainted blood, and he died from it." That was my friend Paul that told me that during my life review. I know it. I know it. I kept seeing one thing after another happen. All the pursuits, all the arrests, all the interaction with people. Those of you that have had a situation where maybe you've been through a divorce like I have, the hardest thing I've had to do from this whole thing is deal with betrayal. I actually saw things that happened to me where I was betrayed in a relationship. There's no secrets. It's all truth. And my ex-wife, we had a situation. My daughter's an attorney, but she practices law in the state of Washington and up in Alaska and in Washington, D.C. And she had some cancer issues. So I was up in a hospital waiting room, and her mother was there, and we hadn't talked for a long time. And I just sat there and I said, we have to just let the past go. And we were talking, and I just said, I have to know something. And I brought up about what I saw about the betrayal. She confirmed it. So what I saw in my life review actually happened. It affected me and it affected my relationship. So it's there. It happened. And I just wanted to know. So I asked. And I've tried to get over that. I don't know if I ever will be able to, but I have to. You have a daughter who's sick and she needs her parents. So you got to put your big boy pants on and John Wayne it and do it. And I did it. I've done it since then. But betrayal's been the hardest thing I've had to deal with. And all the things that happen in my life, they just kept going on and on and on. I couldn't look at the higher power. It still bothers me to even talk about it. It was so humbling. It's the real you. There's nothing but truth. That's all there is. I did notice something fidgeting off to my right. And I looked over there. My dog Scooter had died in 2001. And she slept with me, slept in my truck. I had cattle at the time, so she did all my work for me, basically. She was a great dog, great friend. But she passed, and I mean, it was a big void in my life. When I looked off to the right, there was my dog Scooter. I did not know that animals were there. I was on this TV show, I Survived Beyond and Back, where I had to turn in all my hospital records, and they verified that you were deceased and everything, and all these other things. And when I talked on this show, and I didn't know when they aired it, but when I talked on the show, a couple of radio talk show hosts started to talk about me on their radio shows. One was a guy named Mark Levin, who has a radio show, and another one was a guy named Michael Savage. Apparently they are very close to their pets, but they had saw this I Survived Beyond and Back TV show. And I didn't even know it aired. I was actually going to, driving to my son's place in Phoenix and was taking a vehicle there to give it to him. And I was on Interstate 5 going down to Los Angeles. I was in a rest stop, got some gas, and thought, well, I got to use the restroom. So I walked past this room. I saw a bunch of people in the room, and I thought, well, having a little meeting there. I went into the restroom, and I noticed some people looking at me when I went by. Well, the next thing I know, I'm at the urinal, and there's a guy next to me. He says, "You're the guy that was on the TV show." I said, "What?" He says, "We just saw you on a TV show." He says, "The one where you died and came back." He said, "Are you the guy?" And I said, well, that's a rumor. And I said, when was it on TV? He told me he just saw it. He says, will you come and talk to our group? And I said, well, let me finish my business here and I'll do it. So I did. I walked down, and all of a sudden I realized spirituality is not just on church on Sunday or mass. It is a phenomenon now. I think cable TV is like the show I was on, I Survived Beyond and Back, or maybe some of the topics like Dr. Kason's been on Dr. Oz and several other shows. I was just interviewed for William Shatner's show, Unresolved. It's on the History Channel. It's a phenomenon. All these truck drivers were sitting in this thing and they wanted to talk to me. I felt like a celebrity. And I said, all I did was just get up and I interviewed for the show and told the show what had happened. They said, well, we want to talk to you more. And I said, well, I've got to go. I've got to make it to Phoenix, Arizona. So I left. I wished I could have told them to check out www.spiritualawakeningsinternational.org, because I think they would like that. Now, who knows? Maybe they've signed up because it's growing so rapidly. But anyways, I head out towards Los Angeles and I go in. There's an In-N-Out burger there. And I thought, oh, God, I know my cardiologist would kill me. But I said, I'm going to have a double with grilled onions. I got to do it. So I pulled in there. I saw a couple of police cars there. And I'm standing in line. And this nice young policewoman comes up to me and she goes, you're the policeman that was on the TV show. And I said, that's the rumor. I said, when did you see the show? She said, last night. She said, we were talking about you. And I said, there's no coincidences in life, are there? And she goes, do you like to join us? So I said, let me get my burger and I'll join you. So I did, and I sat down with him. And then I realized that spirituality, truck drivers, police, people that aren't your traditional church audience or spiritual audience, it's mushrooming. And I had a really nice time talking to them. And I told myself, I've got to check out this show when it finally comes on. So I really didn't know what they had left and what they didn't, because I talked for quite a while, and I guess my segment was like a 15-minute part of it or whatever. I talked for much longer than that. So I made it to Phoenix, dropped it off. I was on my way home, and I kept thinking about this and how my life's changed and everything, and it really has. I'm not the same person that I was. I'm not saying this for anything more than what I feel. I mean, my life review, it just still bothers me that I'm no different, and I say this, than Marco Polo, Christopher Columbus, or Mark Twain. They were in a time period where there were no videos, no photographs. Christopher Columbus, Marco Polo, they went on adventures. They came back to talk to the Queen and the people that's involved with her, and told them what they saw. Same thing with Mark Twain, where he'd go to India, come back, and he'd rent a hall in San Francisco, and the first night he'd have maybe 6, 7 people there. Before too long, it was packed. But he would talk about his travels and talk about where he's been and what he saw. I'm no different than that. Where I've been, there's no cell phones, there's no cameras, there's no video. It's just you listening to me tell you what I experienced. If you want to believe me, that's fine. If you don't want to believe me, that's fine. I feel I'm supposed to address everybody. It's not easy to do this. Like after today, I won't sleep for a couple days. Whenever I make a presentation, it brings out a part of me that's uncomfortable, but I'm getting more comfortable talking about it. And I hope you'll take the time to check out, well, Chicago IANDS has a great library on people that have had near-death experiences. There's a lot of them on YouTube. And now Spiritual Awakenings International has a pretty good album too. We're starting it. And the life review process was just one of the things that I experienced. The color thing, colors that don't exist. I can tell when this is going to happen. And it's usually when it's real quiet. And so far, it's been every night that I've been, every time it's happened, I've been in my home environment. But I would sit in the dark and I could see the colors all over again. And when my dog Harley was alive, Harley died about 5 years ago, and I'm having a hard time with his death too, actually 4 years ago. He would just go crazy. Animals feel the spirits. I'm convinced of it. And I'm lucky to see those colors. The other phenomena that happened, and there's a book written by a lady by the name of Deborah Diamond, who I was one of her topics. This is her book. I don't know if you can see it. It's called Life After Near Death. She wrote a book. I'm one of the featured persons in there. And my vision, for example, had been like 2070, 2080 or something like that, 2090. When I came back from my near-death experience, it ended up being 2010, and it's still 2010. And they can't figure out why it improved so much. So that's a good thing. The other bad thing is I set off alarms. I can't go to TSA things without setting off every devices and stuff. I have a problem with my electronical field, or what, I don't know what it's called, but I have that. But I want to spend a few minutes talking about another near-death experience that I had, which was on the same day that I died. And I was never familiar with the multiple NDE STE thing until Dr. Cason cornered me to be on a panel in Philadelphia at the Chicago IANDS last conference for people that have had multiple near-death experiences. My second one was the same day when I was revived by the doctors. I had a wonderful doctor. I had a doctor that would not let me die. As an example, when I passed, about the same time Michael Jackson, the rock star, passed, and they took him, he was dead for about the same amount of time, 45 minutes. They took him to the UC Medical Center in Los Angeles to try and get one particular doctor to work on him who was renowned for raising the dead. I read an article about this, and they listed some doctors that are renowned for it. Well, guess who one of the doctors was mentioned? This is my doctor. And he told me that he'd come in the hospital thinking he had to write some notes to release somebody. He got there and he was so tired, he forgot that he'd done the notes. And then he heard me coming in. So he rambled down to the emergency room and started to work on me. He would not let me die. I was revived. And then I died again for about 10 minutes. And that experience was totally different than this other one. This experience, I was on top of the bed as they were working on me in the emergency room. I was watching them go helter skelter. I saw them a flat line on the screen. I was watching this, and all of a sudden my attention went to another part of the hospital where a couple of people who were admitting me were going through my wallet. And my attention was diverted towards them. They were going through my wallet, and they were looking for my medical cards, and I kept them in a special place, but they were going through my wallet, and all of a sudden they said, "Whoa, this guy's a retired California Highway Patrol." And they were talking about my police ID. I was trying to tell them where my cards were, and then I realized they can't hear me. I'm dead. So next thing I remember, I'm back in my body. I was on these machines in intensive care for days. It was horrible. I was so grateful because my children were able to come and see me, and I thought if I'm going to pass, at least I got that. And the doctor would come in and talk to me at great length, and I told him about seeing the people in the other part of the hospital admitting me and going through my wallet. And he goes, "Wait a minute." So he went and he found those people, brought them to my bed, and he says, "You tell them what you told me." And I told them, and they said, "That is exactly what happened. That's exactly what we said." So if you hear somebody talk about a near-death experience where they have a life review and they're gravitating into a tunnel and light and everything in different colors, I experienced it. It happened to me. If you see somebody else or hear of somebody else that talks about hovering on top of their bed, watching people work on them, or in my case, watching somebody go through their wallet, seeing something in another part of a hospital or whatever, it happened to me. I would believe them. Then, and I just found this out a couple nights ago, I was talking to Dr. Case. She grills me a lot and she said, "I think you've had more than 2 NDEs. And I said, or STEs. And I said, "Well, why do you think that?" So we started to talk about things. And I was on a drug called Plavix. And it's a blood thinner. It was when I came back to life and stuff, revived, the doctor had me on Plavix. It was one of the things. And there's a lawsuit out about how Plavix causes bleeding, but this wasn't an issue when I had passed. So the doctor did the right thing by prescribing me this Plavix. It's just I didn't react to it well. In 2010, I felt really weak and like I was going to pass out, and I started to bleed from both ends, massive bleeding. And I John Wayne'd it and made it to the hospital. I actually stood next to myself in the bed as they were working on me. So that was my 3rd NDE, and or STE, and I basically had forgotten about it. I've been so wrapped up on the day that March 22nd, 2009, I just forgot about this one, I guess, or I just didn't want to deal with it. But Dr. Kason got it out of me. And So I've had that experience. So if you have somebody tell you that, or if they told me that, I would believe them. I just I want to thank everybody here that's attending this to be able to tell my story and to encourage you to listen to others. And these groups are really growing. We started, I was vice president of IANDS. I did that. And Yvonne's right, it was 2019 to 2020. And when Spiritual Awakenings International was born, it got to my 72nd birthday, and I thought, Yvonne and I had talked about starting this other nonprofit last year during the summer, and it got to the point where I thought, if we're going to do it, we better do it. And I was going to do it whether she did it or not. I decided to do it. And I hope you take the time. Diane Willis, bless her heart, really helped us. We transformed her other group, IC, into this new organization. But there's some really cool things, and you'll see it go to all these different countries. We're networking, and we're finding out about people all over the world having the same type of experiences. You at Chicago Lions know that because you're an established organization, but a lot of other persons and people haven't been exposed to it. So when you start getting Hong Kong and you start getting India and Malaysia and some of the places that we've gotten into, it's really neat. So I'm probably going to end this. And I think I've been talking for about an hour, a little over an hour. And I know there may be some questions that you might have of me. I just want to tell you, though, it's a real honor to be here. Thank you. And how do you guys do this? Do you have them go to the chat room, or do you have them ask me directly? Who's in charge that can answer those questions?
I can answer.
Yes.
People can go to, on the bottom of the screen, of the Zoom screen, there's a chat screen, and ask your questions for Robert on chat. And you can go to the chat screen and read what people have written and pick your questions that you want to answer.
Well, while that's happening, I'd just like to add a couple more things. One of the other issues that I've had to deal with, I have come back with like medium tendencies. And I think Dr. Kason will tell you that I've been 100% accurate. I've been fighting that and going into that. But I was at a Walmart store less than a year after I had been revived, and I was just standing in line, and there were people in front of me and people behind me, and I just kept getting all this communication, and I heard something about Chinese dragon red. So I turned to the lady next to me and I said, "Did you just paint a wall in your house Chinese dragon red?" Because I saw a wall. And she goes, "I did. How did you know?" And it was a mistake to do that because I got followed all the way out to my car, people wanting to know who I was and stuff. But I've had to deal with those tendencies, and I just can't quite go there yet. I don't know if I ever will be able to. But that's something that's happened. And I've had other things. I'll hear about something, And I'll get a hunch. I'll tell somebody about it. I actually did this to a police friend of mine. It actually was like, what happened? Um, and in my life review, there was one incident where I was a watch commander and I was called out up in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Car had gone over the bank, hit a tree, and got engulfed in flames, and there was a body in it. And it looked like a traffic accident. So they needed some pictures and stuff. And I was the guy that would go out sometimes, and I would have the unfortunate responsibility of telling someone that one of their loved ones had passed or whatever. And I went up there, took pictures, and we got the fire out and the car up, and found out who this guy was. He didn't live too far from there, so I looked at him. He was laying in a seat, but he was laying like this with his arms crossed across the seat. And I told the guys I was with, this isn't a traffic accident. This is a murder. This is a homicide. So I called the sheriff's office out, and we looked at it, and they said, no, it's a traffic accident. I said, no, it's not. But we ended up taking the report anyways, and it came back. They found a bullet in the fellow's chest. So it was a homicide. And when I had to go out to tell his mother, I drove up. And as I drove up and got out of the car, I heard her just screaming. And I knocked on the door, and she was on her knees, just broken down. And she says, I know why you're here. And so I held her and comforted her and said, I'm so sorry to have to tell you this, and told her where her son was going to be and so on and so forth, offered to take her down there or to call a family member or friend to be there. When I saw that part in my life review, I heard someone say, thanks for what you did for my mother. Everything you do means something. My life review was a reckoning for me. I probably will have to go through another one. But when I came back, I decided I was going to try not to do nothing but good. I started grant writing and doing stuff for homeless people and people from different walks of life and stuff to help them out or whatever. It means something. So your actions mean something. And do we have a question yet?
You have several questions there.
Okay.
Can you see the chat list?
No, I can't. Hold on. Let me hit the chat box.
Yvonne says, please tell us about your mediumistic after effects. That's kind of what you were talking about. Yeah, but they're actually stronger than what I talked about. I'm pretty spot on. And it's not, sometimes you don't want to know things. But yeah, I have that. So, and I'll deal with it one of these days. So, but I did cover it a little bit. So. And then from Karen, thank you, Robert, for telling us your experiences. What do you mean by STEs? You know, Yvonne, can you explain what an STE is, since you coined the phrase and it's, go ahead, please.
All right, Robert. STEs are spiritually transformative experiences, and there are various types of them. So one type of STE, of course, is the near-death experience. But other types of STEs include mystical experiences of all kinds, various sorts of psychic phenomenon like clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, mediumistic experiences, channeling, past life recall. Those are all psychic phenomenon. Then you can also have Kundalini awakenings or spiritual energy awakenings, inspired creativity, you know, the downloads that people get. So these are all, the whole spectrum of experiences is called spiritually transformative experiences. So thank you, Robert, and we'll take it back to you.
No, thank you for doing that.
And Fran asks you, how has this changed your life and why?
Well, I take nothing for granted anymore. I live every day like it's my last day. And I just try to experience everything. I try to be considerate of others. I try to help. Like I got involved with an animal shelter where I was involved in that for 3 years, and that was really a good thing. It was wonderful. A lot of politics in it, but it was a wonderful experience. And I tried to be accepting of people and what they've done in life. I have friends now from all walks of life. I don't talk about these things to my police friends. I've established other avenues, which has been Spiritual Awakenings International, or IANDS, a different type of a friend or acquaintance. That's more accepting and doesn't tend to doubt what's happened. So that's the best I can answer that.
Thank you. Pam asks, she says, everyone has regrets in life, as you mentioned. Do you feel absolved in your life review?
No, it's a reckoning. I don't. I have contacted people that I've been able to and brought up what happened and trying to make amends with them. And that's happened. There's something you can't change what's happened. You can't change history. You can't change your life once you pass. All you can do is, if you have an opportunity to have an extension like I have, which is 4,255 days, I try not to do anything other than good. So, thanks.
That's good to do. We become aware that everything we do is important and that we can make an enormous difference in so many people's lives just simply by being kind.
Yes.
It's an enormous lesson. A friend asks, why do we live?
I don't know if I can answer that question. I will say this. I probably did not, when I came back and I was hooked up to all those machines and my life, I could have passed any time. I defied the odds health-wise. But I would have been, once I saw my children, I would have been okay with going. And so why do we live? I can't answer that. But I'm grateful.
I've been given some information about that in my experiences. And I kind of liken life to a trip to the gym. Um, we go to the gym because we push against these, with these machines, and they strengthen our muscles a lot faster than if we didn't do that. And when we're sitting over on the other side before we're born, thinking about how to become more evolved more quickly, everybody wants to become more evolved more quickly. And we're given the knowledge that if we come to Earth, which is considered one of the most difficult places to be, it's like going to the gym. We have negativity on the Earth plane, and we butt our heads against the negativity, and it makes us stronger faster. We're here to learn. We're here to learn lessons that help us evolve more quickly. And when we butt our heads against this incredible negativity that's on the Earth plane, we get smarter faster. And that's what I've been told. Maybe Yvonne has something to add to that.
Well, I'll just say that my understanding from having had 5 near-death experiences, and also in my last near-death experience, having memory from my past lives and seeing the pattern for my many past lives, it's very much like what you said, Diane. I just frame it a little bit differently, of understanding that our souls are here in order to grow. You know, it's like, it's a school. Basically, it's a school. And if you're taking tough classes, you learn more, using Diane's analogy. And so we're learning and we're growing as souls. We all eventually, it's a happy ending. We all eventually are going to graduate from the school of life. We're all going to make it back to God consciousness. But at the same time, because we're growing spiritually, we're also here to serve. We're here to serve and love in addition to learning. So,
Good.
Anyway, I'm wondering if we have any more questions for Robert. We put him back in the spotlight.
Do.
That's fine.
Diane Allen has asked, how has this changed your relationships towards your religion, your relationship towards your religion? And do you have a spiritual practice that sustains you?
My religious beliefs have evolved from where they were when I'm a product of a Jesuit education. And I'm so grateful for the ethics and the values I got from that. I really am. I have explored different religions all through my adult life, going to different churches. Now I'm kind of involved in one that I think probably is going to be the final one. I really enjoy it. I just got to finish my lessons. But the core values that I got, my mother was Irish Catholic, so the core values you get in that type of a situation they're invaluable. And I think they made me who I was, and I'm grateful for them. When I was talking about those truck drivers and the policemen, everybody's looking for something now. It's non-traditional, I think. And not everybody, but a lot of people are. And I'm just not the same person that I was. I know there's a question on here about reincarnation that's coming up. Do you believe in past lives and reincarnation? Before this happened to me, I didn't. But I'll tell you what, my whole outlook has changed. And it's just from what I've experienced. And I could talk for hours about this. And probably it'd be better in a private setting. But I believe in it now. I do know one thing. I do believe we have a purpose. I do believe that. And I think as parents and grandparents, we have a purpose there too, which is special. I know I have a special relationship with my grandkids that I may not have had if I hadn't had this happen to me. But anyways, that's enough about that question. What else you got?
Lori says, fascinating, Robert. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I am curious if you are able to try to describe what the colors look like that we do not have on this physical plane.
I can't.
There are no words.
There's no words, no.
Yeah.
And there's no conception of time either. It's when I'm in that zone, I've been amazed. Sometimes it'll be for 10 minutes. Sometimes it'll be for hours. I like the long ones, the long bouts, because you feel it's so soothing. It's just wonderful. And I don't know why I have that ability. It's probably just an after effect from being dead so long, but I'm grateful for it. And no. One thing I'll say about watch your animals. If there are spirits around, pay attention to your animals.
Around. They look around.
They do. And my dog would bow, like bow. And they're signs. They're very spiritual. I didn't realize it. Thank you for that question. I wish I could answer it better. If you see I just love light. I developed a hobby of photography. And if you look at Dr. Kason's picture, that's one of my pictures. And I just love light and pictures. And I'm obsessed with it. I came back with that, and my photography, I wished I'd done it years ago, but I've had like National Geographic's publish some of my pictures or accepted them, and Country Magazine, all these different. I'm just obsessed with it. So
wonderful. You just kind of answered the next question a little bit. She said, Emily says, thanks for sharing your story. How has your experience changed the way you live everyday life? Well, certainly your photography is a big change in your everyday life. Are there others that you noticed?
I think I'm more thoughtful. I make time for people. I appreciate interaction with people, social interaction. I mean, I've been like I've been a member of the Elks Lodge since 1982, and that's social interaction, for example, or when I was with the Lions Club or the Rotary Club or whatever. But now I take the time to, if somebody has a question for me, or even a neighbor or whatever, I take more time, and I try to be personable with them and make it more about them than me. So for me to talk like this, you have to draw it out of me. I think Yvonne could tell you this. You got to draw it out of me. And they'll call me and say, I saw you on a television show or whatever. You know, I don't want, that's a different time period in my life, and I still want to honor that with some of those folks. I don't want them to think I'm crazy. And I shouldn't feel guilty about that, because the more you're around people that have had NDEs or some of these experiences, you realize that's just, they happen. And in a way, I'm blessed. So that's how I feel about it.
I think sharing is a blessing too.
Pardon me?
I think sharing is a
Yeah.
blessing too. You know, sharing with people. You know, my guides tell me when to talk about what I do. I can be standing in a grocery store line, and all of a sudden somebody says on the other side says talk. You know, and in the beginning I was very shy and hesitant to do it. Now I just open my mouth and let it out. You know, I lead this group for people who've died and come back, I say, and off I go. And I've never met anybody who didn't want to hear about it. Never anybody who wasn't interested, because there's not a person on the planet that's not going, that didn't come from the other side, and not a person on the planet that isn't going back. And on a deep level, every single person knows that. So when they have an opportunity to talk to somebody who knows something about it, most of them get pretty excited, and they're really happy to learn about it, no matter what they did before.
You know, one of the top 10 questions of all time, I read something about this, forever has been, what happens to me when I die? People wonder about that.
They do.
Some of us can at least give our observations, and people can form their own opinions. One of my favorite things, I just happened to be on YouTube one night, and on the sidebar there was a thing that popped up. It was George Harrison's last interview, the Beatle, and he had Rabbi Shankar with him.
Mm-hmm.
What a fascinating interview, where you have somebody that's as famous as George Harrison realizing at the end of the line, maybe he should have been worried about, instead of fame and fortune and women and all the other things, should have been worried about what happens to him when he dies. All of a sudden his life was changing, because he had terminal cancer. And so I do talk to a lot of hospice people in that situation. I have some doctors that call me and ask me to do that, believe it or not. Doctors are coming around.
Yes.
And I've sat with people as they've died, and I've felt the spirits come in. This one guy, I said, "Who's Junior?" Because Junior's my brother that died about 10 years ago. And I told him, he's here. That person died about probably 20 minutes later. There's no doubt in my mind
Junior came.
that Junior was there to collect him.
Yeah.
So every day's a gift. Make it an adventure.
Marilyn asked you if you felt loved during your life review.
I did. but I felt uncomfortable. I felt maybe a little ashamed of myself at times. I don't think I did anything that bad, but for me, I was disappointed in my behavior, and I've often thought, I wonder if there's something I could have done to change the thoughts that people had of me or perceptions of me, but you can't go back and do it. It's just, especially your work-related stuff. But I try to work on that right now, and for now in the future.
Good. Sarah asks, how do you make up for the bad stuff? She says, I have the Irish Catholic inside on confession, and 3 Our Fathers, 3 Hail Marys, 3 Glory Bees, but there has to be more to it than that.
I think you just have to live life and do the best you can and learn from your past mistakes and ask forgiveness.
And ask for help,
Yes.
because they can help you too.
Thanks, Diane.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Well, I've been through something similar, so I can relate. Terry asks, Terry says, thank you, Robert. I haven't been to an IANDS meeting since moving from Chicago 4 years ago. My beloved cat passed away this week, a cat that looked very much like Diane's that she's been patting. I'm so glad that you saw your dog in the afterlife.
I'm gonna put it one step, take it one more situation. If you're ever laying in bed, and I do, my dog used to sleep alongside of me in bed. Sometimes at least I did in the past, I would kind of feel like, well, is there something, I felt like something was in bed with me or whatever. That's my dog now. They come back and they visit you. And it's just wonderful. You'll see your pets again. You will.
Think of pets as little pieces of love that just come to support us and help us get through. Let's see what else we've got here. Bob says, at the time of your life review, did anything about your previous lifetimes come up?
Not during my life review, but since my life review, I've had some incidents that have happened, and I could take all day talking about those, but it made me a believer. And but not during my life review, no. I don't recall that. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think those are all the questions we have. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Or does anybody else have anything else they want to ask?
Yes, I have a question, if I may. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm unable to chat. I'm using an iPhone and I'm not all that familiar with it.
Sure.
I don't know how to use the chat portion. So my question is two-part. First of all, during your near-death experiences, was there anyone who told you it was not your time yet, that you would have to go back? And the second part of my question, I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, but there are some people who do terrible things in their lives. Murderers, rapists, people of that nature. They are unable to reckon with what they've done because in most cases, they've either killed somebody or something of that nature. So how do they, or are they able to reckon in any way?
see, your first question had to do about if, did somebody ask or tell me I had to go back? Me personally, I don't recall that. I was just back. As far as reckoning with some horrible situations where you may have done something like killed somebody or whatever, I can't really answer that. I'm going to ask Yvonne Cason if she could help out. I know you're kind of rolling your eyes, but can you help this gentleman with that, Yvonne?
All right, thank you, Robert. Some of you may have heard of Daniel Brinkley, who is a groundbreaking NDEer, and he wrote a really incredible book, Saved by the Light, and there's also a movie by that name, Saved by the Light. And he was a sniper during the war in Vietnam, and he killed a number of people. And he had what he calls a panoramic life review, which was very similar to the one that Robert had, where he experienced the feelings of everyone around him. And he experienced how the people felt that he had killed. And he also experienced how their loved ones and their families felt about the fact that their loved one had died. And so at the end of all of this, in his life review, Daniel Brinkley, I mean, he was in front of the higher power and he felt unworthy, etc. But, you know, and it's been a long time since I read his book, but what I can say is the feeling that I had after reading his book was that, you know, there is no sin so big that it can't be forgiven. And maybe there will be, you know, in yoga, they talk about karma, you know, maybe there will be some karmic price. Who knows? But the thing is to sincerely desire to change one's ways, to try and make amends if you can. But the other thing is to have love and compassion for yourself. Because I want to bring in another point is that, you know, that in war and as police officers, or sometimes you're defending your family members, there may be a situation that you do harm to another person or even kill another person, because that is where life has cast you, that is your role, to be a soldier or to be a police officer. And my experience of the higher power and what I've learned, and maybe Diane would like to comment on this too, is that the divine understands this, that when this is your role in life, this is your role in life. And you know, you mentioned people who committed rapes or murders. You know, God's justice is perfect. I think they will have to learn their lesson, however that is in karma. But that there is no sin that ultimately over the course of many lifetimes, this is what I was shown, every sin is forgivable over the course of many lifetimes, as long as we learn our lessons and are sincerely striving to be a better person. Diane, do you want to add to that?
Don, I think that was an excellent answer. Yeah, the first thing that came to mind when he said that was that one of the things I learned on the other side is nothing is as bad as we think it is. I mean, we can pile up horrible guilt and imagine that what we've done is so terrible and awful. And yet when I was on the other side, it was very clear that we have a way of doing that it really has no basis in fact or reality, that nothing is as bad as we actually think it is. So I think that exactly what you said is true, that there's nothing so bad that can't be forgiven, and that the possibility of change and an openness to other ways of thinking and so on and so forth are always possible and always there. It's our willingness to be able to receive and learn from those things that's the most important. I agree. Thank you. Anybody else?
No, thank you for your answer. I kind of find it difficult to believe that. I mean, if you try to explain to a victim that the perpetrators were given some kind of absolution or some kind of pass for what they've done because it's supposed to be a life lesson, that's a pretty tough sell. You, Robert, being a police officer, I don't know how much you've encountered in that realm, you know, people of that nature, but I think it just blows the whole concept of a heaven and hell out of the water. There doesn't seem to be any perpetual suffering for someone who's caused somebody else so much pain. And I have a hard time accepting that. But your answer is your answer, and I thank you for it.
I also have repeatedly come across, either directly to me on the other side or through other people encountering this directly, that there is not a hell, that we create a hell for ourselves, and there are dark places on the other side, and we can experience them if we feel that we deserve to experience them. But in fact, God doesn't send anybody to hell. And when you get to the point where you can realize that no one dies, and you think, what's the worst that could happen? Oh, I get killed or I die. Well, when you get killed, you immediately are somewhere else. I mean, you feel exactly the same. You no longer have a body, and you're at a place of love, and you can you learn to look at things differently. It's very hard to describe this, and I know it feels like that anybody who does something like killing a person should receive some kind of god-awful punishment. But it's so unique. It's unique for every single person, every single soul. The path is their path and nobody else's. And I believe we're all dealt with the utmost compassion and love. And I have a tremendous faith that things are as they should be. Don't know how to describe it because there are no words that really do the job well. But one woman told me once, listen and trust. And if one can put themselves in a place of trust and trust God to take the best care of us, you can let go of all the rest. Truly.
If I could add a couple words here, I'd appreciate it. I could really hear, I don't know the name of the fellow who's on the iPhone, but I can really sense that you're feeling a sort of injustice. And how I've come to understand this is that God's justice is perfect. The higher power, whatever name we're going to use for the higher power, that there is an ultimate justice, that it's not that, someone can go and murder somebody and go, oh, God forgives me, there's going to be no consequence. In yoga and in Buddhism, they talk about this thing called karma. And karma is the law of cause and effect. As you sow, so shall ye reap. And that many in yogic philosophy, it's understood. And I have found yoga, for me personally, I'm a Christian yogi, and I have found that combination has given me the best understanding of what I've learned through my spiritual journey and my many experiences. But that I'm going to give you an example. some of my past lives. I've seen very, very many of my past lives, many, 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 many. And, you know, I wasn't always a saint. You know, like I'm going to give one lifetime I saw of my own many, many years ago, in many, 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 many lifetimes ago, in the heat of passion. I caught my spouse in an affair, and I killed that person, right? I killed that person in the heat of passion. So guess what? I've incarnated with this person many, many times. And so there's been this back and forth. So the next time on, you know, maybe it's not that he killed me, but he betrayed me. Like, you know, he virtually killed me. And then we go back again, and it was back and forth. And so there was spiritual lessons that had to be learned. And when I encountered this person in this lifetime, I finally got it from where I was in terms of my spiritual growth this lifetime. It was not, for me personally, about being angry again and, oh, this person's been nasty to me for so many different lifetimes and I'm going to be nasty back again and get revenge. I had to learn to rise to a higher plane of functioning and a higher plane of understanding. And when I turned to God in prayer and started, rather than, oh, you know, he's so bad, got out of that completely and stopped looking at myself as a victim and was, Lord, help me learn what I'm supposed to learn by having had this extremely painful experience in my life. And that what I had to learn, the lesson I had to learn, was to stop judging the other person, stop being critical of the other person, but to work on myself. That was lesson number one. And then lesson number two was, have I always been perfect? Have I never done something wrong? Have I never hurt another person? Of course I have. Nobody's perfect. So I would want to be forgiven. Could I not find it within myself to forgive this other person? Now, it was hard because there was a lot of pain, there was a lot of anger, there was a lot of hurt, but at least I knew what my spiritual work was for this incarnation was, you know, stopping with that he's bad, she's bad, just breaking out of that, rising to a whole new level to, all right, we've all made mistakes. Can I learn to forgive that person? So I'm just giving that as an example of what can happen over many lifetimes. That person who's a murderer this lifetime, maybe he's going to be murdered in the next lifetime, and then maybe it's going to go back and forth for a while. But ultimately, it's my understanding that all souls over many lifetimes will come to a point where they're ready to break free of that, and they're ready to learn their spiritual lessons and start turning to God and becoming more spiritually mature, where you start rising above that. So I hope that's helpful in some way.
It's very helpful. Thank you so much, Yvonne, for adding that. We have one other question here from Clara. She asks, what about people that have done atrocities like Hitler? And that's very appropriate because our speaker next month will be Toni Winninger. Toni is an amazing person. She was an Illinois state's attorney, a prosecutor for the state of Illinois, a lawyer, and she had a near-death experience and changed her life completely. She's now a psychic medium and she channels. And she's channeled, I don't know how many books she has, 8, 10, 12, 15. Toni, I don't know. I can't tell exactly, but it'll be there for next month. But Toni interviews people on the other side. And she had a helper who has since passed, but she's still able to do this. And she has offered to interview some famous people for us right here on at our monthly meeting. I suggested Ruth Bader Ginsburg would be an interesting person for her to interview, but she has all these books of people that she's interviewed, including Hitler. And she interviewed Hitler both in his soul persona and in his Hitler persona. So you have an opportunity to hear what he has to say as the person Hitler, and as he is as a soul, and why he did this. It's very interesting. It's in one of her books. She's done. You can get them on Amazon. we usually have them when she's spoken for us. We are taking suggestions. If you want to send in, there's somebody you particularly would really like to hear from historically, a historical person, we'll give the list to Tony and she will make the decision who she brings through. But first time somebody told me about this, I said, oh yeah, right. And then I read one of her books, and then I read all of her books because she does it so extremely well. And you read this and you can feel the energy from these people. She does an excellent job of bringing them through. So I'm not sure what the name of the one with Hitler in it, but if you go on Amazon, you can find it. And they're so worth the effort. And she will be a very, very interesting speaker for us next month. So I hope you all are able to join us and bring your friends. And it's so nice now because we can invite people from across the world to come to our monthly meetings. People who normally couldn't come to Evanston Hospital can now join us. So please come and bring your friends from everywhere and get to know Tony next month. I think that's about the end, unless anybody has anything else pressing. We'll make time for it if it's there.
I just like to thank everybody for the time today and for inviting me. Thank you very, very much. I really enjoyed this, and I'm going to put in one more plug for Spiritual Awakenings International. Please check us out. Please subscribe. You won't regret it.
Thank you so
And,
much.
Thank you.
Robert, and also to you, Yvonne, for joining us as well. You both added so much to our monthly experience, and we'll be looking forward to watching it again on www.chicagoians.org. So we can just let you leave when you want to leave. If anybody wants to talk to anybody, you can. I'm going to have to excuse myself for a moment. I'll be right back. So.
Thank you again.
You're so welcome. Thank you for coming, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Every month, the second Saturday of every month at 2 o'clock in Chicago time. Okay.